Okay, shall we, we are a few members short, but we better start. I know I've had apologies from Councillor Graham and Councillor Marie who can't attend, but I think the question of a quorum isn't really relevant. I'll briefly introduce why we're here. For some time, people have been dissatisfied with the watercourses through Sandwich. And I mean, reading these historical accounts, I think that goes back to the 1300s. People have never been satisfied with the flow of water into Sandwich. Right now, we are even more dissatisfied, and I think we could start by discussing what the issues are that people can see and can complain to the council about, and it was that really caused the Heritage and Townscape Committee of the council, whose chair is sitting at the end there, to initiate having a working group to look at what's happening with the watercourses through the town and around the town, what's wrong with them, and what we can do about it. So this group was set up, this is the first meeting, as a working group, time limited. We've only got a few months to produce a report which I think should cover what are the issues, what are the problems, what are the complaints, how that came about, a bit of the history of the waterways, and some proposals to what can be done to alleviate the problems that we've identified. And so a working group was set up consisting of myself as chair, Councillor Siverkaya there, Councillor Marie and Councillor Graham, who can't be here, Councillor Paul Carter, and there were two co-optees, which is Carol George from the town team in Sandwich in Bloom, and Peter Ashford on the end from Sandwich Environmental Conservation Group. And as this is our first meeting, I throw it open in effect to people to say, what are the issues? What causes them to worry about the state of the waters and the watercourses around Sandwich? I mean, I could list them. I could count the red bumps on my body because I used to live in a house with a watercourse that went through the garden, and so the mosquitoes happily lived around my own garden. But let's open it up. What are the issues?
For me, the main issue, they're both issues, but is the rope walk. Why are animals dying in it? Why isn't the pondweed or whatever it's called being removed? And if the sluice, if Councillor Friend said the sluice is fixed, why is it not being opened to make it flow?
Which sluice?
The one in New Street? No? He did say that was fixed, didn't he? But I don't understand if it's fixed.
Well, I think the trouble is, until the downstream flows, and it won't flow until they finish the work on the Brewery Sluice, at the end of the guzzling, they can't let it flow out into the river, so it won't flow anywhere. They've really got to get the downstream flowing, and then they can start flushing through the backstream. But they're actually saying that will be completed till the end of this year because they've got a new flat to go on the end, I believe. What Keith said through the other day.
So is there anything we could do to sort it out now? I mean, I wonder if it's all the silt they put on the edge of the...
No.
It's not that.
According to Darren Solly of GDC, they have addressed the issue of that gate at New Street End. They dug it all out and did some repairs on it. DDC intend, as I understand, to put in a very large pipe under the bridge that goes over to the skate park. They did think about heightening the bridge at one point, but I think it's too near the town walls and it was going to cause an awful lot of other issues and delays. But they've now got a breeding issue in the water at the other end of, I believe, I don't know whether it's otters or something, at the other end of the water.
Oh, Waterways.
Waterways, sorry, that's right. So they can't, until after the breeding season and that has sorted, they can't deal with the bridge, but they do intend putting a very large pipe that will go, so they will dig down further and put a large pipe to go under that bridge. And at the same time, I think from reading the emails that you've sent, they are going to do some desilting, and they're going to stack boards, I think, at the side of the water and put the silt. I couldn't work out whether they meant behind it or at the side of it to keep, and they'll deepen the channel of the water.
That was in the
That's
stream,
in the
wasn't
downstream.
Yes.
it? The other side of the crossing. wasn't it?
Yeah.
So-
The bats, before they can do the bridge, they've got to put a causeway to take the silt out to the field down the bottom, behind the cricket pavilion. So they're going to do the causeway at the end of this summer, apparently, and then they're going to do the bridge at the end of the following summer.
Yeah.
So the only thing I think they won't dredge until they're doing the bridge. We could possibly expedite them once they've done the causeway to dredge it. So perhaps the old pipes could be cleared. And
Right. So you think they're not going to do the bridge, the pipe work under the bridge until the end of not summer 23, but summer 24?
that's what I got in an email from Darren Solly.
Yeah,
Right.
I've heard that. I knew about the pipe
How long
at the
do
end of
they
the bridge.
envisage this work's going to take?
Well, I don't know. I mean, they're going to put the causeway in, which presumably will take quite a time. There's two streams to go over, isn't there? One behind the I don't know where they both go. I think one's where it comes in from the downstream into the end of the bats, and then there's another one that runs behind the cricket pavilion down to the railway.
That's right.
And they've got to go over both of those to get to the field the other side. So yeah, I mean, it could take
So they'll do one at a time, presumably.
I have no idea.
What worries me is there in fact enough water in the system to get a decent flow, even if they clear this little blockage and that blockage and that blockage? It won't affect any change if there's no more water in the system to get a flow, because it's the flow that the mosquitoes don't like to breed in, and the algae and the water weed won't stick.
Yeah, I mean, they're not actually going to be a flow, but they flash it, don't they, apparently. And I was talking about somebody that used to work on I think it must be National Rivers years ago, and he was saying he used to let the water in from the start, shutting the root street sluice, so it would build up, and then they'd let that into the bats, and then they'd open the sluice again, close everything off, and then when it dropped, they let out the water from the bats, which would flash it through. So it didn't actually flow, but they flashed it on a regular basis. Which does make sense, because when I first moved here, because I'm next to that, it used to go up and down periodically.
I think those people only retired about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe longer, and after they both retired, nobody was taken on, which I think is the downfall.
Silly question. Which way does the Delft flow? Because if it's flowing one way and the land is the other way, water doesn't flow upstream.
No.
So no matter if those gates are open and the water level is the wrong way round, it's not going to move. And if it does move in the right way, where's it going to go? Because at the end of the road walk, it's a dead end.
There is a sluice through there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's one there, but I can't ever remember it being open. And that's 60 odd years, 65 years.
The issue is that I think right from way back, the water came down springs into the Hacklinge area, and it came from Worth and Hacklinge
That's it.
into the town and out
That's
into the
right.
Stour.
Yeah.
It is now so slow, the only indication I've ever had of which way it's flowing is, I saw a pike in the Delft stream a couple of years ago, and it was on the St George's Road side of the railway, and it was facing towards the railway. Now I think pike sit there facing into the flow of the water to catch whatever's coming down, which implies that it should still flow from Worth into the town along New Street, through the town and out through the Stour. But there's so little movement.
Well, apparently they used to have, well, they still are. You go down to the Roaring Gutter, down at Bettsinger.
Yeah.
You've got the North Stream one side, and there's boards that separate that from the Delft Stream. And apparently they used to remove the boards and they had a steady trickle flowing over all the
That's it.
time. So it was
Such a
running
simple
steady all the
idea
time
and
to
it
keep
works.
to keep it clear. But I suppose because of the work that's been done on the outlet, the Brewery Sluice, they've shut it off. So it won't flow until, but it can't flow until they've done the Brewery Sluice, which will be the end of this year.
No, it's almost creating a weir, isn't it? When it reaches a level, it trickles over.
Yeah.
Or, if it's too high, take a board out and it runs off. Put it back and it picks the water up again.
Yeah, apparently they used to have it set so it would trickle over all the time. But
Yeah.
I suppose it's because it's I think it's pumped from the Roaring Gutter over
That's it.
into the North Stream, isn't it? So
And when you look at the Roaring Gutter water, gin clear, isn't it? Beautiful.
yeah, apparently the water in the butts is good quality. Apparently,
Yeah.
by the fish diet, I don't know, but apparently that was the last report.
I'd like to see it clear though. It shows there's no fish moving about.
But there are things that cause the duckweed, of course, because there is sewage leaking periodically into the butts, which is one of the worst things for
Where
creating duck.
from?
Where from?
From the, well, you know where St Thomas's Hospital is, you know, they've got the
Mhm.
barriers around there, out the manhole that's under there. It's where the pumping main from Loop Street meets the gravity main, which goes down to the bulwarks, down by the quay.
So there is sewage. in-
Every now and then there
the
is
butts,
sewage,
isn't it?
I've reported it, I've reported it for years, and ever since, well, the last 5-6 years I've been reporting it on a regular basis, every time I saw it, how often it happens. And in the end I started reporting it to the EA, and that's the Dover District Council as well as Southern Water. And they finally came out and they did jet it through because where it comes in, it runs into a reception tank apparently, so it can gravitate away because the two sewers meet up. There's another sewer which comes down the road, and then it runs into that to run away, and it's backing up, I think, basically. They jetted the pipe out and they're planning to put a bigger reception tank in, but of course they've got to get permission from the ancient highways and ancient monuments rather, because it's where it is. So they're still waiting for permission to do that, I was told last time I inquired. And then hopefully that should resolve that. But of course we've got that gravity main meets the gravity main that runs down Witherspoon Road, which has got added housing on because of the building further up Witherspoon Road, so perhaps it can't get away, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see that.
Might explain the smell sometimes, I guess.
Where's that in the
Well, sort of along some of the waterways, sometimes they smell quite strongly, whereas other times it's not noticeable.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, my concern is with Waterway opposite Waite's Garage in New Street, because, well, it's quite odd because there's a pipe running through it and one side is clear and the other side is absolutely awful. And I don't understand that, but it's one of the first things that visitors see when they come into the town. So they come out they come by train, so they come out the station, turn that corner into New Street, and there it is. And it often looks very full, and it often collects litter as well because there's a bin there that frequently overflows. I have suggested that perhaps they put 2 bins there. Apparently they can't put a larger one in. So, and I said, well, why not just put another one the same next to it? Because that's a very busy bus stop. The children use it, and so they buy snacks from the shop opposite, and while they're waiting at the bus stop, and a lot of this debris just ends up in the waterway.
There actually wasn't a bin there at all until the town team got hold of it. And David Silk and John Vanderbilt regularly go down there with long fishing nets and fish out the
Exactly what I did
they fish out
10 years
the
ago.
stuff that's laying that lays on the top.
Yeah.
We did get a bin there that got broken, and yes, you're right, we can only put the one bin there, and what we understand is that a vast number of children in the main that come down from Manwoods, because the children, there will be children that are there from the Tech as well, but when the people from the Tech are caught and chastised, the Tech do deal with it. But Manwood's headmaster won't deal with it at all because it's outside of the school, it's not his responsibility. So that is a major issue in terms of litter, and until you can get a handle on that, a proper handle, it's not going to stop. That's going to just keep filling up and overflowing, and all this rubbish is going to be left in that water. But does it not flow under New Street because of when they built, or not long after they built the station, didn't they sort of change the direction underneath there of where the water flowed from Delph across through into where the road walk is? There seems to be some evidence in the books that something happened at that point that also stopped it, which I don't know how and why, but that didn't help. And now we've got to get that water flowing. You're right, we've got to get the water flowing from the Delph back where it used to flow and back into the moat stream and into the road walk, and then it will go up. And then the thing is, at Gaze and Salts, they've managed to clear the duckweed, as I understand it, but they're doing it because they're able to put boards across and go in very regularly to fish it out, and also they manually operate the sluice gates there, which helps the water go back out to the Stour. And it also said in that email that they had looked at, there's a problem under the culvert bridge that crosses the Ash Road, and they had looked at that, but it was going to cost thousands and thousands to deal with that. So that water that goes past the cricket club and then along goes again under the Ash Road to get through to Gaze and Salts. There's a big problem there. So whether that means that water gets backed up this way, I don't know, because if it gets to Gaze and Salts, they seem to be able to deal with it, albeit manually.
I think
They don't actually link, do they? Sorry, Keith. They don't actually link Gaze and Salts and Guzzling. Don't actually link up apparently. I know it looks as they do because you've got that.
Well, Darren Solly told us that it did. You see, this is.
Told me it didn't.
Yeah. Well, this I think is part of the problem, isn't it?
You
don't seem to know.
You're talking about the Guestling then?
Sorry?
You talk about the Guestling linking up.
The Guzzling and the stream that goes, or the dike that runs in to the one in the nature reserve. I'm told they don't link.
Yeah.
But
Well, we live in at Strand Street, and the Guestling runs at the back of our garden, and it doesn't appear to us. We were infested with mosquitoes nearly all year, all the time, everywhere.
It doesn't seem that the water flows at all. It seems it's just stagnant, because we put a piece of wood in there that hit the bottom, and it actually bubbled where it was so
Like,
stagnant.
Well, gases.
Well, the good news is that's part of the Delph, which if they do the flat, that should flow.
It doesn't seem to flow. Not
Well, it doesn't at the moment. They're doing the flat at the end of this year, I believe.
Is it?
isn't the flap at the Stour exit, isn't that the problem, is that flap stops water coming in, lets it out. But if we want a good decent flow, wouldn't we let water in from the Stour at high tide so that that then flushes through,
That's right.
admittedly against the nominal flow, and it would come round and kind of flush it out, isn't that?
Yeah, that's the idea.
But DDC also said that was the responsibility of the Environment
Yeah.
Agency, and the Environment Agency won't start to do regular lifting or flushing out of the sluice gates, because once they've done it X amount of times, it appears to become their responsibility. It costs them money, and therefore they're not willing to take it up.
I read that into their email. I have to say that the Internal Drainage Board and the Environment Agency have recently, some of the members of the working group will have seen two very positive emails from both those bodies wanting to meet us and to discuss what can be done, which I think is a major step forward. And in fact, they intend to do some work on what the Internal Drainage Board said was upstream of the railway line. Now, we can all decide what is upstream from the railway line, and they're trying to clear it out because they see it, even though we can't see it, as a high point, which slows the water, and invited us to have a site meeting, should we want to do that, which I think is a good idea. And they seem keen now that
And
we've
where
had a
would this
working group.
be?
Sorry?
And whereabouts would this meeting be at?
Well, they said upstream, on the Delf, upstream of the railway line. Now, to me, upstream
So it would be down, hasn't it?
yeah, where that pike was, but I mean, but they need to clear it out, that there's nowhere to dump it, because they said on one side is the road, and on the other side is people's gardens. But they're going to put some elaborate brushwood structure to hold the, I can't imagine there's enough space, but
Yes, because I've read these emails, I read them very quickly, and I was struck by how positive they are, that they do want to meet this group. And I think going for a walk with them and pointing out where we think the problems are, and they can show us where they think the problems are. But one of the impressions I got was that they've been dealing with the flood threat to Sandwich. That's their top priority. And from a very quick reading, I got the impression that they're trying to stop water from the Stour coming into the Delf, because then the Delf will flood and then all our houses will flood. So that's what. So is that the impression you got? And that therefore there's a problem with this sluice at Gayson, or the brewery sluice as it's called, because although they put it in, they don't actually want to let the Stour flow into the Delf, because that might create a flood risk. So there is a conflict, and the other conflict I think that we have to acknowledge is that the farmers need water.
Do you know what the salinity is of the river?
No.
Because the last thing you want to do is let salt water into fresh water.
No, right, but the Delf, they want the farmers, I mean, reading those historical accounts, the Delf is fresh, and so the farmers want it for their land. So there's another conflict there. So, I sometimes think this is impossible, and that really what we ought to think about is whether there are short-term things that can be done, like you putting out the reeds, or using some form of scraper that was used at Gayson to clear the lake or the pond.
I think Bob Page,
whether that might be possible, but it would have to be done again and again.
I think Bob Page and May Another were in a rowing boat, and they used basically a floating poly rope which is like the same idea as I said, a bit of 4x2, rope either end and walk up the rope walk,
Yes.
one on one side, one on the other.
Yeah,
Yes.
But to do that effectively, you've got to get rid of that rush.
Yes.
Otherwise, you won't be able to do a straight sweep,
Yes.
and it'll just go. The oxygen levels will absolutely rocket because the duckweed is not cutting the oxygen off. Because that's the biggest problem with the duckweed. Completely strangles anything down below, deoxygenate. That's why all the carp die.
Yeah.
No oxygen.
Yes. I mean, it would be wonderful if Sandwich had beautiful waterways, but it may be necessary just to say it has to be volunteers, you know, doing manual labour to keep it clear on a regular basis. I think.
Yeah, I think
Desperate needs being deeper though. Desperately.
Right.
I think the problem with that is when you've got all the other things, like you've got water voles, you've got nesting birds and everything else,
Right.
you have to be taken into consideration. So it can only be done at certain times of the year in the summer.
Well, voles are April through to June.
Hmm.
That's their breeding season. If
So
it's a cold spring, it'll be May to July.
yeah,
And that's it.
Yeah, but you've got to work outside those.
Yeah.
To determine what the actual dates are and work out.
I can
work
say
outside
August
it.
onwards.
But I mean, going back to flushing it and what you were saying, Claire, about the brewery sluice, there were other things they were going to do because the chamber is already high enough to stop it. If they can shut the flow off the other side, the chamber is high enough to stop it actually coming out. If they can't close the flap, they're going to put more screens. They've got a bar screen already. They're going to put a finer screen in, I understood. Again, they're working on it now, apparently. So that it doesn't actually block up the valves and that with debris, because it can take all the debris out. So we should have to wait and see on that. So that's apparently being at the moment.
And also, Karen Solly said that there was no way that you could do on the rope walk water what they're doing at Gays and Salts. Apparently there is no way that it can be done on that stretch of water. As we asked him, because we know what they were doing at Gays and Salts and how they solved the problem. I mean, they do it very regularly, obviously, but we know that they did it, and he said it can't be done there. And I've got a feeling it was to do with the level of the silt in that in there as well.
I'd hate to think how deep the silt is in the rope.
Have you?
I'd hate to think.
They've already, within the last few years, cleared, dug a lot out and spread it on Cowley's meadow. Maybe they need to do it again, but
Yeah, only
They haven't-
deeper.
they
Instead of using that 8-foot bucket or spade they had, God knows who the people were, they want a 15-foot spade. So that, and then go right over the far side, a 30-foot arm, so it goes from here to the other side of the room and goes right into the edge and draws it all back, and then just put it all over the field behind them.
But
Like
they were extremely worried about doing that as well, about desilting anyway, because of the percentage of water that's in the silt. And then if they get lots of complaints about the fact that it's being put to dry on the other side of the field.
Mm.
So what they said was that they would, to a level that they would find out how much they could take off and use Kent Depot to take some of it away. Donkey paddock.
well, they keep promising to put it on the donkey paddock.
Yeah,
So
put some there.
wildlife work on the donkey paddock is constantly delayed.
Yeah.
So that, because they keep promising we're going to dump silt all over it, so don't, but they never do.
No.
My other issue with that is you can clear out a channel, make it deeper and deeper and deeper, but if there isn't enough water in the system, you'll just end up with a lot of water in that very deep channel and even less water in the rest of the system.
Eon years ago, 50 plus years ago, whenever the water level was low through a hot summer, again, Bill Sears, who worked for the council, turned up in council lorry with a 6-inch pump connected to the mains, and stood there and just water from the mains into the road walk all day to pick the levels up.
But would that be good for the fish? Because wouldn't it be chlorinated?
Well, 50 years ago, of course,
Well,
our
maybe not
water was
50 years
slightly
ago,
different.
no.
But I don't think it would be any worse than what it is now.
No. If they put the mud or the silt with containing water on Cowsley's meadow, then actually that water would probably drain back to the water table and back into the waterway, wouldn't it?
End of upgrade, yeah.
Yeah.
Surely it has to go on Cowley's meadow anyway, because as they're silting, they're taking out, I don't know, animals and things, aren't they, which need to get back into the water. So if you take it all the way to the donkey paddock, how will they get home?
Well, things like dragonfly larvae and this sort of stuff, they have what they call diapause. So you can dig up the eggs and they will lay dormant 9 months because they're in a little bowl of jelly.
Yeah.
And then as soon as a bit of rain, they're off and they hatch. And the little, what they call instars, then crawl, and they'll crawl to the nearest water. Even though it dries up, they will still find the water.
Wow.
And the life cycle carries on.
What we want and what we haven't quite got, despite some of the recent friendly emails, is a sense of what Sandwich wants out of our water courses and marry that up with what they're prepared to do. Because mosquitoes, we want less of those. Dead fish, we want less of those.
Yeah.
Waterweed, well, a bit of waterweed is actually very good for the wildlife because it shades the water from getting too hot.
Yeah.
So less waterweed, but not no waterweed.
Yeah, that was why my idea of having those little 6-foot clumps every 20 yards from the bank, especially for spawning, because the carp and other fish get in amongst it and spawn. And of course, a lot of the eggs are eaten by invertebrates, etc., but also a lot breed. The carp we've got, or we did have in the road walk, was sterile. Now what's the point of having a sterile carp in water if they can't breed? And this is what I was saying about why we got tied up with Kent. I'll never know.
So
Because
those
they
fish,
supplied them.
those fish were put in the road walk, weren't they? But so they're only for fishing. They don't breed.
No,
They're only just so that people can hook them up, hurt their mouth, and throw them back in.
things with F1s is they are bred to grow. The more bait you put in, the bigger they'll get. And in sometimes, little children, when I was 10, I used to go down with my 6-foot cane my brother made, and I'd catch little roach like this. That's what kiddies want. They want to see that float go under. They don't want to hook a whale and lose it and get snapped up because they'll start crying their eyes out. So why those are little wildies, English wildies, taken away somewhere in Chilham? Well, I know where they are. They're in Loggie's Pond at Chilham.
Being turned into a fishing lake, basically, isn't it?
Yeah, he kept all
Not
the
what it
fish
should
that
be.
he borrowed and put them in his own named own pond, Loggie's. And now what's happened? They've lost all their Chilham waters. Old Sherlock from Brett's.
I heard they were just moving the fish around different business initiatives, setting up ponds and then moving all the fish to one of them.
All
Well,
on the Mid-Kent ticket.
Yeah.
When you, being a little bit on the inside, because I used to donate £200 or £300 worth of stuff for their members. And when you know the inside story, the capstan fully scaled, a fully scaled is a carp with big scales all over it. Absolute fortune. 10 or 20 pounder, we're talking 10, 12,000 pounds. He actually borrowed biggest plated mirror in Caxton. Now, when you, well, not now, because they don't have the waters, but there's one lake at Milton where the road turns on the Canterbury Road, going out to Chiller. There's one lake on the right called Snow Lake, and they call it the Caxton Mirror, and it's 30 odd pounds. 30, that's a fish this big. And they call it the Caxton Mirror. Why? You'd think they'd call it the Chiller Mirror.
Anyway, what is it that we, as residents of Sandwich, want our waterways to look like? How they function? Because the days when it was our source of clean water and our source of cholera have only been gone 100 years and 120 years. And effectively, we've been left with a redundant system, bringing clean water into the town, or less clean water into the town. Now, I think we want it because it's unique, special, unique to Sandwich, the remnant of a early Middle Age clean water system, but it doesn't look or sometimes smell right, and it's virtually effectively neglected because it serves no, from the point of view of some people like the Environment Agency, it serves no purpose. Their purpose is to keep water out of Sandwich.
It's not, well, it's not attractive, is it? It's
No.
not, currently it's not attractive, so it's not really giving us anything, is it?
No.
Or it's not something to be proud of.
It's scaled down, some of them filled in.
The only thing is, it really does look special.
I think it does. That's
Through
what
the
drew
town.
us to come and live here, because we're
Yeah.
new to the area.
Yeah.
And we've been here 2 years, and I've seen the decline just in 2 years
Yeah.
of the rubbish, of all the debris, of all the trees that are in it. You know, it's really has. Only in 2 years I've seen how
Yeah.
much it's.
And if we want to, well, we've got two or three things really, isn't it? We've got a problem in Sandwich at the moment anyway, because the footfall and custom and so on is not good. It's very poor, and it has been declining for some time. We get a lot of tourists in when we get festivals. We're not attracting our local residents to come and shop in Sandwich either. When COVID came and there was lockdown, the number of people that walked, local people that were walking around the town, was incredible. I mean, I was down on watering on the quay quite regularly, the flowers down there, and there were lots and lots and lots of people, families, all sorts down there. And they liked the waterways, they liked to see what was going on in the river. They've come down through round past the playgrounds, which again need sorting out. But we've got waterways there, so we've got residents, families, children. The water that comes along the butts. I mean, the children cross over that bridge with all that stagnant water, and all those mosquitoes, all those dead fish, trying to see what ducks sort of get their way through it. I just think it's unacceptable.
Yeah.
I think the state of that water is totally unacceptable for our town. I don't think it's acceptable for the fact that it's also a medieval town, and our waterways are part of that heritage, and we should be able to keep that heritage going at some level. It may not be quite the level that we would all really want, but I don't see why, whether it's the Environment Agency, Dover, Kent, Sandwich, or whoever is responsible, I don't see why they can't see what it is that it does for Sandwich. And at least that water should flow through on the road walk. It should at least be clean enough water to be attractive. You know, are we going to attract visitors and tourists in and say, come and walk, which is a beautiful walk, all the trees, you walk along there, it's fantastic. You still see children wanting to feed the ducks.
Yeah.
You're not doing anything for the town while we allow that water. And as for mosquitoes, I mean, we write regularly about the mosquitoes. They were huge, and they were this year. And I've got grandchildren badly bitten. I mean, some people get badly bitten, some don't, I know, but badly bitten, so they don't go there anymore.
We can't use our garden because we're so close to it.
It's horrendous.
We
So
can't go in and
we've got to
out.
do, I think we've got to insist that something gets done about the water system within Sandwich for a number of different reasons.
With the environmental health, I mean, if there was a sample of the water sent off, I mean, how bad is the water? Has it been tested and sent to environmental health?
Can I say
Is there
the
sewage in there?
Dover District Council pest control officers, 2 of them, addressed, out of the blue, we didn't ask, addressed Sandwich Town Council just before Christmas. And they sample local waters regularly. Don't blame me, I'm just the messenger. They said, we can't seem to find many mosquitoes in Sandwich. Swear to God, they said that.
They said we can't find a particular kind of mosquito,
Yeah.
the kind that we were expecting to find.
Was that only?
And then they said, as I remember it, maybe there's another kind of mosquito which we don't know how to look for, but that's the one that's biting. I think that's more or less what they said.
I think that's true. There's tiny little ones that are
Yeah,
all
there
over
is
the place.
loads.
There is one thing that apparently duckweed does suppress mosquitoes because they can't lay their eggs on the surface of the water. But I mean, that's just.
But it was worse this year,
But
wasn't it?
the good thing is, I mean, that doesn't mean you despair. If they really do get the Delf stream flowing this year, as they say they will, then that will clear the Delf out. And then if they're going to do the bridge or do the causeway at the end of the butts, perhaps we could put pressure on them to dredge the butts that they haven't done. That's from the donkey paddock right the way down, using the causeway they've just installed, and then temporarily just flush the water for the pipes through underneath the bridge to the cricket pitch before they replace it the year after. And then if we get permission to let the water in, it could be flushed.
But that's years away.
Not necessarily, you know, if they do it this year.
Well, I thought they weren't doing the pipe until summer 24 or maybe after.
The pipe, that's the bridge pipe. They're
What
doing the
pipe?
causeway, but there's already a pipe under the bridge. It's not very big, but it used to work. It worked for years because they used to flush it. So it must work. So if they cleared that, then it would be a temporary solution until they do it the following year.
Ah, okay. So why are they? I thought that pipe was broken.
I think apparently it's just blocked. And
Why
when
not
I
clean it
spoke to
then?
Darren Solly, he said, well, the trouble is it blocks again after a couple of months. And I can't see that because it used to work. It used to flush it. So
Okay.
I think the ironic point with the mosquitoes is if you had more fish in there, in the streams, there'd be less mosquitoes. Because in the larval stage, can't be myriads of flashy word chironomids, mosquitoes, by thousands.
You wouldn't.
So there wouldn't be so many hatching.
A fish wouldn't last 5 seconds in the Guestling. The way the condition of the water in the Guestling, it wouldn't last 5 seconds.
We
It'd
don't
be
even get
dead.
ducks in there now.
Well,
There's no birds in there. We haven't seen birds in there for
the problem also.
since.
Sort of like I
Even in
remember
the summer last year.
at the
we
back
had
of Gallows,
ducks in there.
which is where you are,
Yeah.
I can remember seeing shoals of roach swimming all up and down that piece, right up past the Gazen Meadow, back again, because obviously their exit didn't exist because it's been closed for so long.
The problem also is, I think, if you were a private landowner, if this was a private landowner that were doing this to people, I think the environmental health would get involved. You know, and they'd say this is unacceptable. But what's ridiculous here is that there's no one actually saying who is responsible. I mean, you know, will the real person in charge stand up?
Mm.
You know,
And of
it's
course,
a joke.
with that bit of Gayton and Gallows Field just there, there's a lot of heritage in the dyke and the field.
Yeah.
So to start digging that lot up.
On the subject of who's responsible, yeah, because I used to have a water course through my garden off Waterways Place, I spent a lot of time trying to pin down who was responsible, and they eventually were very firm. It was me. I was responsible for keeping that water clear because it's riparian responsibility. Now that does mean that Dover District Council, which does own a lot of the land beside a lot of the water, does have a big say.
Well,
Because they own land.
If you look at it from a certain perspective, as you said, we came to the boundary and said, well, you may own halfway into the river or halfway into the stream. They own all the other half, don't they, all the way along, as we're all separate entities.
Yes. The internal drainage board can be very helpful, and it's them that are contracting a lot of this work to clear this and not clear that. So I'm looking forward to, and I'm sure we're all invited to go to that site meeting with them to discuss whatever we like. The Environment Agency, I think, tried to keep one step removed and say, we save you from the water, we don't give you more water. And I still come back to my point, I think we need more water in the system. Just clearing it out with no new sources of water doesn't really help.
Yeah, I mean, people have talked about how it used to be clear, it used to run. So what I want to know is what's changed? Why has it stopped running?
Because it
You
won't
know,
run out
what's
the
the
end of
new
Brewery-
situation?
It won't run out Brewery Sluice because they're shutting
Yeah.
off
I
until they
see.
repair it.
It is brewery.
Until that's
Sluice.
open, they can't let it run down,
Right.
which hopefully. will be
And
able to-
brewery sluice is being dealt with this year, I think.
According to the email that keeps in
Yeah.
there.
Where exactly is Brewery Sluice, please?
Brewery Sluice is at the end of the Gusling, just down from where you are, before it gets to the River Star.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the car park, is it?
Yeah, the one up by the car park.
Yeah.
If you look there, you'll see some bar screens there and a big new building. And there's some rotor valves and that, or hydraulic valves on the other side.
Okay, thanks.
So, yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so we know what people want. Less mosquitoes, fish not dying, clean water, no sewage and no duckweed on the rope walk.
Limited.
Limited.
That's enough, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do
that's
you,
okay.
excuse me, do you have a group that actually goes out, and a voluntary group that goes out and actually cleans up?
Sorry, I missed
A
that.
voluntary group that goes out and actually cleans up?
Well, gas and
Okay.
salts, just all voluntary.
Yeah, I'm not talking about
Gaze
gates
on,
and salts, I'm
yeah,
talking
gaze
about
on,
the
yeah.
waterways,
That's
just
Bill
do the
Hollow and a
waterways.
few others, isn't it?
No, the general waterways, either things don't get done
Yeah.
or everybody waits for the internal drainage board or the
Right.
Environment Agency to do it.
There were
But this
people
gentleman
cleaning
was
the rope
stopped
walk.
from doing stuff.
Yes.
We were stopped from doing stuff.
Yeah, there were people
Yeah.
doing things and
Vision
people
stopped.
fed up.
That's why we came along, because I thought, well, you know, I don't like the fact that, you know, there's so much rubbish, and so I would like to, if there was a group, to volunteer,
Yeah.
because you've got to, if you want to keep your environment nice, you've got to put some effort in, so that's why I thought maybe you've got a volunteer group that
If I remember
would
rightly,
tidy
weren't
up.
The main person that got me involved was Andy Duncan.
Yes.
Now Andy Duncan, he met me on the bank on the bus, talking and that, and he said, oh, I'm interested in getting the road walk sorted out. So I said, well, count me in, I'll help you. There was there was myself, Andy Duncan, Alan Farrer, Woody Wood from the mill, We were down there with our nets, waders, in the rope walk, all with nets, clearing the duckweed. Again, got told to stop by the
Yeah.
Sandwich Council.
Well, it is actually, it is owned by Sandwich.
When you say
Council,
Sandwich
and-
Council, what do you mean?
And we were told not to do it. It was the
Right.
responsibility, and the silly thing was, it was STC that said they were gonna do it, but they never did.
Talking about, wasn't there was a group that we were in touch with, wasn't there?
2 years ago now.
It's 2 years,
What's it
that's the
called?
group
It
I was
called-
talking about,
They
and
were
you
going
were
to come and
part
help
of
us
it.
clear it, actually. They were going to be in charge. It was something to do. What was the name of that group? Can you remember, Keith?
No.
Dan Friend actually was going to send us the address. And he sent it to the Sandwich
He was the
group.
one that banned it.
And
Yeah.
it was, what's it called?
He wrote to you and said, don't do it. Councillor
He-
Friendly.
I will find out the
I
name of the
put
group.
something on the
Perhaps it's-
sandwich blog and deleted and said, please do not make comments about the state of the road walk. And every time I put something on there, it's deleted.
Me too. Join the club.
We've all had that experience,
Yeah.
about all sorts of things, but I'm just,
But we were stopped by DDC, well, I wouldn't say stopped, but when we did the last litter pick in Sandwich, Colin, and a whole load of us joined in from various volunteer groups. And at that point, I think Colin Wiles and David Silk were going to go into that water. And it was DDC, it was Darren Solly who said, don't let them do it because of the waterfalls and the other things, and it's dangerous and we haven't got the necessary health and safety things in place. So they couldn't go in, but it actually didn't stop them using the nets from the bridge and from and they collected loads and loads of rubbish that was there.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
But you know that isn't solving the
No.
the main problem. No.
And that is the trouble, that we've got water bowls and everything else that need to be protected.
Yes.
So it needs to be controlled and needs somebody to manage it, which is why the White Cliffs something group it was.
Is
was
that who I
coming in,
Oh, what, this countryside group?
something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And they were going to send a team down to help us do it, but we never heard any more, did we? To get in touch with them.
It's in this book it says who is responsible. So Sandwich Town Council is responsible for the butts.
Yeah.
Holders Gardens it's Dover. The rope walk was Sandwich Town Council.
How old is that book?
Well, it's not that old.
no, I think,
It's not that old. It's a few, maybe a few years.
yeah.
And
Who's responsible for the bit behind the council offices or the works department?
I
The
don't.
cricket club?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
Well, Gallows Field was Dover District Council. Cowley's Meadow is Sandwich Town Council. The Donkey Paddock is Sandwich Town Council.
So basically, the whole of that river is STC.
Well, it does look like it.
Wow,
No,
that's news to me.
no, the Sandwich Town Council owns Cowley's Meadow, which is the Backer Waits' filling station,
But not the water.
as far as Wunsborough Road on the far side. Everything on the near side is owned by Dover District Council. The bit you walk on along the road is Dover District Council.
So if you want to do something on either side, you've got to get first of all
Yeah.
permission from
See, the
DDC and then
tree
permission
line
from
from Stoward Tributary, Sandwich Town Council.
You can make it up, couldn't you?
It's not very,
We
it's
were
not,
blaming everyone else.
not very convenient, is it, for
No.
for any for a holistic approach? You know,
It's
it's
the perfect-
crazy.
It's a perfect blocker.
Yeah, to everything. Oh well, we can do that bit, or we'll do this bit, or we'll do the other bit, but we won't have a whole approach.
What are,
I was going to ask, do we really need a DDC person working with us?
Yeah. Council
Some
Friends.
say they should,
Yeah.
I don't know. Council Friend.
Yeah.
the,
Oh, yes, that's
The other approach is to say, well, why not have a coordinated effort from Sandwich to say to DDC and the Internal Drainage Board and the Environment Agency, this is what Sandwich wants. And then put it in a unified way. The problem with having a representative from, say, Dover District Council is it just goes to him or her and disappears into the ether, rather than being a formal approach from Sandwich, particularly as it's going to cost money. And
I had a meeting with Sir Chandler, DDC, Dan Friend, and Toby Cobb.
Who's Toby Cobb?
4 years ago at Gazing when it was all rubbish. I took some photos where it was totally overgrown, blah blah blah, and the same thing happened. Leave it to us. Sue Chandler's word, we will sort this out. 5 years ago, 4 years, 5 years ago. Luckily, Gazing with the grant, it's now done. Now why, oh why can't they do the same?
There was a move at one point about 4 years ago, 4 maybe 5, that there's the Parks and Open Spaces organisation, and at one point they were looking at whether or not you could say Sandwich in total was one park, rather than trying to pick off
these little
places.
bits.
So the fact that you had the town walls and you had the waterways, you could create a park walk that linked up and went all the way around. Now that all got completely dropped when COVID came, and there was then no money because I've met a few times with Sue Chandler, and that's what she told me then, because I think that was when we were looking at the rope walk and the flower beds to do something with them, and she said you need to leave this now because, and they, yes you're right, it dropped completely dropped, too much money, and that budget went.
And the ironic thing is now you've had this lovely group of people, but all those borders are going to look spectacular in the summer, and then they're going to turn around and there's a sludge ditch. Well, it's going to look worse.
I have had a very quick look at outside funding for getting something done, and the big lottery, or whatever it's called now, I think they just call it the National Lottery, it does have a big chunk of money for green spaces, so that might be one. And part of the big lottery or national lottery or whatever is also the Heritage Lottery Fund, and they similarly have parks. I think refurbishing parks pot of money. So it's not difficult to perhaps to find the funders, but actually applying, and particularly given all these different stakeholders, different councils, the Environment Agency, the Internal Board, or whatever it's called, it would be incredibly complicated to put an application together. And I know that the council did put an application together to refurbish the Guildhall to the Heritage Lottery Fund, which failed. But it did succeed in getting money for the refurbishing the Guildhall forecourt. So it can work, but I think if the council were going to do something like that, it would probably have to employ somebody. It's a full-time job. It'd probably take them a year's work just to bring the bodies together to agree on what needs to be done. But it's not impossible.
And is it not possible first to do, I think what we're suggesting is to go to those particular officers or whomever they are from those 3 or 4 different groups and say, because actually together we might understand what what they are already really all doing, joined up doing, because I think there's that it looks as though DDC are doing things. It could be that the Environment Agency are doing something else, but we need to understand how that joins up. So I think that would really be your first point. And if it means walking with them as well, or then bringing a nice map that said, here's where it starts and here's how it connects, because I think that is still quite difficult.
Yeah.
And there's lots of different opinions about which way it flows and goes, but I think that would be your first.
The point might be though, if you don't have a proper cohesive plan and you don't have definitions of who's responsible, that you could get it set up and someone will do something, and then if you haven't got the person who's responsible, then it's going to fall down in a year's time, or 5 years later we'll be talking about it. You need to find out who's going to take responsibility.
Yeah.
We need someone to stand up, or the agency, whoever's responsible, has got to be made responsible, and we've got to make them do what we want them to do.
They have no money though, I don't think, do they, the Environment Agency?
They would say they haven't, but then we all do, don't we? I think that's a good point in that the Guildhall Square redevelopment, whenever we see it, there were 2 or 3 bodies, including Sandwich Town Council, Dover District Council. In the end, they decided Dover District Council is the body that oversees it, even though the money, only about a third came from Dover, and Dover District Council actually appointed a project manager to run it. So there is a person named, and there is a council in charge of the Guildhall Square.
And there's someone responsible for whether it's all right or it's not all right.
Yeah.
Well,
So whether it's all right anyway.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the bulk of that, I mean, most of that money came from Royal Ancient.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't really come from the lottery funds as such. It
No,
came from the Royal
I mentioned
Ancient.
the lottery fund in relation to the Guildhall.
Yeah.
I know the lottery fund has nothing to do with it.
No.
But I mean, I agree with you that it needs one body to, and probably with one person to, get it together. I doubt very much whether Sandwich Town Council could do that. I think it would have to be a higher level body, almost certainly Dover, and we would have to do it selling beautiful waterways in Sandwich as a tourist attraction. I think that's what might work. Because, Broadway in the Cotswolds, it's known for the fact that it's got all these waterways. And it would be wonderful if Sandwich could be similar, like Bruges.
Many years ago, I suggested to Dan, one of the people that were there, that why don't they approach Kent Wildlife Trust, who've got, I did an update today to 24 volunteers about what I've seen and so on and so forth, and it's all free.
What is free? Volunteer labour.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. It needs organising. There are some costs.
I think we've got to be a bit careful if we're going to get flushing and water flowing. Look at the erosion aspects and the effects it can have on other things, paying like water bowls and that, with the levels rising and going down again. So I think we do need to take some advice on that. Do you think?
Yes. You don't want to flood the water bowls nests.
Well, exactly. With just
the
taking
water
water up and
to
down
run,
like in the backs, will it erode the banks? Having the water flowing down the bank, we have to get the flow at the right level and everything else. So I think it would need.
Have water bowls been specifically identified?
I have,
Yeah. And not someone's seen it and said, oh, it's a water bowl and it's a rat.
No, they've been identified.
Super.
Plenty of rats.
There's plenty of
Plenty
rats.
of rats.
Yeah.
Because so many, we've got bowls. No, it's not. It's a water.
That sounds like, environmental reports, one could get, I'm not saying that we should all care for the environment, but I mean, it originally was a flowing system, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So, I mean, would we want the original system, or do we want?
Well, the bats never flow, that
Sorry?
flash, but I say, just, you've got to be very careful how much you take it up and down. But the other one's flowing, but you've got to get the right, they had it flowing very slowly, and it just trickled through. So you have to get the right flow, but presumably the EA knew what they're doing.
Did all the fish from the butts that were alive go into gazing?
So I was told they were.
But,
The problem with the Environment Agency is, having spent several millions, I think, here building the walls and trying to stop, because Sandwich we did almost flood. I mean, parts of it did flood.
You expect to be underwater by 2050.
Yeah,
so-
and that's where they were building the walls, and even when they finished the first part, they then said that they really had to keep going. They realised, I think, and that was also why Gayson Salts and the pond there wasn't, because that got flooded, that got full of the salt water that came from the Stour, that 3rd of December when it all
That's
when
right.
all the flooding, and they were willing to sacrifice that side of Strand Street, and it did. It reached my daughter's back door at about 1 o'clock in the morning, and then luckily the wind had dropped and it went. But the water, like the sanitation gardens, were completely covered in ruin.
Yeah.
Gayson Salts was I think all the fish that were there were killed. I mean, it went all the way up, and they continued to work. So they have done an awful lot of work in flood defence, which is possibly why they're a bit concerned now about, well, hang on a minute, we don't want to risk all this again.
It's a real dilemma.
And so they do have and they have spent an awful lot of money, because it's gone right the way up now, hasn't it? Almost as far as they did some work, I think, up towards Richborough.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of money was spent, and the walls are much higher and so on. So yeah, we're grateful for them saving Sandwich, but
Have we all been to the big splashes at Backsand, which is behind Pfizer's?
no.
Oh yes,
They
yes.
are huge.
Yes.
They've got to be 100 acres each.
Yeah.
splashing.
Unbelievable.
Really.
What's backsplashes, sorry?
Sorry?
Flood fields.
Oh,
Oh, the flood
backsplashes.
fields, yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, because
right,
they're only a foot deep.
Hmm.
The idea being, if we get like the spring times we've had of late,
Yes.
where that water's right up, those sluices, those huge sluices that they've got there, the football goes up and opens the sluice, and of course then you've got these relief channels, 20 foot, 30 foot wide, that run straight in and put the water all over those two splashes. Such a, wow, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
But when you look at what the springtide we've had and all the rain, it's very close to coming over again, wasn't it?
It came over last year in the spring.
Yeah.
In the springtime, came over that wall, because it hit the bottom of the.
Yeah.
Of
If
the
only we could have
planters we
leaks
had
all
there.
the time, it wouldn't be a problem, but I'm afraid Mr. Moon's the problem.
And the one I noticed today, the fields by Monk's Walk, they're absolutely
Yeah.
covered in water, aren't they?
Good to see that's, well, you've seen the water on Monks.
Yeah.
What a brilliant wetland reserve now,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah,
Amazing.
absolutely covered in water.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, what that means is that the Environment Agency will argue we spent a fortune on this, which they did. The positive is that I think within Dover District Council, the appeal of Sandwich as a tourist visitors place with a lovely looking environment and watercourses, that has got an appeal and a resonance at Dover District Council, and that's our selling point with them. And there are one or two enthusiasts at Dover District Council for Sandwich. But I'm on the Port and Haven Commission as well, that helps run the port and the quayside. And there are certainly Dover District Councillors very keen on developing the quayside. But at the last meeting, something that we forget, they said that there are elections in May, only a few months away, everything could change. Because those councillors might not be councillors after May. And so everything starts to slow down again. And so the enthusiasm that we had for developing the quayside, extending the moorings, heritage vessels, that would have looked nice. Had the beautiful trees, and through the trees, Thames sailing barges and things like that. But it's all getting slowed down because there's going to be elections in May, and they may not be.
But I think it should be, well, I don't want to get into electioneering, but I mean, obviously Sandwich wants those things. It wants what you've described. It wants beautiful waterways. It wants a quay that's really working, and that people want to come and look at and play at and so on.
With toilets.
Yes, definitely.
And it's up to Sandwich councillors to keep pushing.
So by the time you've had your meeting, we're in end of January, so by the time we get a meeting set up, even if we could do that in February with those people, then you're talking about March before they go away and come back, maybe with a cohesive plan, and then we meet again to say how is this going to pan out. Then you're talking about nothing happening for April, because I don't think anything's allowed to happen through PERDA, is it? And then you've got your elections, and then you're ready to start with whoever comes in.
I thought, Keith, when you mentioned two enthusiastic people, I thought you were talking about these officers who recently.
No,
you're talking about Dover District councillors.
Dover District councillors who have a portfolio for some development or tourism or something like that.
Right.
Very keen on the developments on the quay and the moorings and boats. But that's all slowed up now because they don't even know if they're going to be councillors. So it's a bit of a drag on progress. But I don't think that we will have by April a plan in place. What I'm hoping is that, and I'm prepared to write the report based on discussions, at least a vision of what Sandwich wants, and some proposals as to how to get it, and that to put to these bodies as a representation of the town's wishes.
I'm just wondering, perhaps what might be possible in terms of creating a volunteer group that would actually contribute towards looking after the waterways.
Yes. As part of that plan.
Yes, indeed, yes.
Yes.
Very
But
important.
we'd have to get somebody's okay, wouldn't we? Because the volunteer group's already happened and they were told not to do it anymore.
Well, health and
True.
safety is,
That's
I
true.
think-
But I
So-
think that you can,
I'm sure there's something.
And I mean, maybe if it tied in with the DDC caretakers initiative, and somehow that could be developed so that it included waterways in addition to land-based activities, because that's on the DDC website, it does talk about doing the risk assessment and so forth, and so perhaps in tying this into a DDC initiative, maybe that might actually help it happen.
That's a really good idea. And also we could do things before, before all of this as well. Because this would take a long time, I think, for them to do everything.
We can always get the White Cliffs people, that's already been put forward by their friends, so if I can find out who they were, we can get
We
in
can
touch
get
with them.
one.
There was a group called the White Cliffs something or other. They were going to, Dan Freeman was saying, get to come in to clean the butts out, basically. That could anyway.
The White Cliffs
Initiative.
initiative cover the White Cliffs round to here. Further up the Stour, there's the Stour Countryside Partnership all the way to Ashford of volunteers.
I'm sure I've got it down somewhere who it was that was bringing this, and I'll let you know who it was.
Yeah.
Perhaps we can
So
find
they
out.
would come and clean it all for nothing?
No, they were going to come and lead a body of people, volunteers, to do it.
That's a good point. Someone's mentioned to me that sort of sharing on Facebook that DDC help a group of volunteers on the River Down in Dover. So a lot of the maintenance there is done by volunteers, but they get the expertise and the oversight and assistance from Dover District Council through someone that actually helps manage the activity. So, you know, if something like that is already in place in Dover, then perhaps we might be able to piggyback off it.
Yeah.
One of my friends actually works for the White Cliffs Experience. He's a dragon man like me, and he's now been with the White Cliffs for 2 years. He would be the type of person that would know who we need to know on the White Cliffs. A chap called Jason, lovely guy. It cost me nothing to have a chat. I chat with both him and his missus, who is the Turtle Dove lady, the best hanger. Now, if we need something like that, I mean, I'm all too willing to have a chat with him, and he would even probably come to one of the meetings if need be. But I mean, it's entirely up to us tonight. I mean, if that will help us in any way, I'll gladly do it.
Yeah, this isn't the only meeting of this working group. This is just the first one to explore all the various worries and issues. So if we were to agree a meeting in February for all of us, put it out on the local channels, and you had a word with the various people. And in the meantime, I tried to fix up this site meeting, which is proposed by the Environment Agency and the Internal Drainage Board, possibly somewhere upstream of the railway line, but I'm pretty sure we could work out where it is. And if you can't see them, you could.
We could wait either side.
We'll fix that up and also announce it on the local channels to get us, well, not to arrive mob-handed to these two poor representatives of public bodies, but anybody interested to turn up to see how amenable they are to a coordinated effort, which everybody agrees to, as to what should be done.
Should we ask DDC as well though, so that everybody that's responsible is there and we can find out exactly what people are doing? I mean, do they talk to each other? Obviously the Internal Drainage Board and the Environment Agency
They do, yeah.
But whether they talk to DDC, I don't know.
When they have to, I suppose. Yeah, well, we could ask Darren Solly from DDC.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. DDC's, what is he called? Environment
Yeah,
Officer?
he works under Roger Ragg, I think, doesn't he?
Yeah. He's their environment and wildlife person.
He's a very
environment
he's
and
very
conservation.
Yeah.
He was very knowledgeable and very pleasant. He did share a lot.
Yeah. Has anybody got any preferences for times, days, evenings for meeting again in mid-February?
It's now, it's Thursday today.
Yeah.
I think we have to meet during the day if we're going to meet upstream for a start.
Well, that one, but also a meeting here.
Friday evening's better for me because I haven't got anything on.
Friday night is music night.
Oh, sorry.
One thing I would say is we came here to find the meeting and we couldn't find this meeting. We had to go and ask the caretaker to bring us up.
Ah,
We would never have found you
No.
if it hadn't been for the
No.
caretaker.
It's
So there
not
were
that
no
easy for us.
signs, there was nothing in the foyer, we looked all over the foyer.
Yeah. It takes 5 years to get the
does.
sandwich smell, that's what it is, you see. I came and just straight up.
I tried the side doors
You're
first.
quite right, we need to public.
Yeah,
yeah.
because there might have been more people,
Yeah.
because I saw it on Facebook, so.
Yeah, but if you're
Otherwise
on
I wouldn't-
Facebook,
I
There were
wouldn't
a
have
few
known.
people on there that said they wish they knew before,
Yeah.
because they
Yes.
wanted to come, it was
Yeah.
quite
Well, I
a
only
few.
saw it
Yeah.
today,
Yeah,
and also you couldn't share it either.
No.
So that was another thing, so you could,
The sharing, I'm the person who posted it, but the sharing is dependent on the group settings that you
Right.
post it in, so
Hmm.
I wasn't able to change that, that isn't
and
something.
it wasn't on Sandwich, Town.
It was,
Facebook
it was
page.
on Sandwich Town Kent, it was also on Sandwich Kent and Sandwich Kent Forum,
Oh, right,
Sandwich Matters and Salmato.
we couldn't find it.
Well,
I made, I'm sorry,
No, that's okay.
I made just a few headings, re the control of the duckweed. Now, I put down, there's 5 points. Point 1 was add natural predators, and I remembered the name of the weevil, and we used a weevil called the Azola weevil, which was supplied by the EA. Aerating the water. Again, hot summer, Bill used to come with his hose, fire it up into the air, sucking water out and turn the water up, aerating. Now it can be done so simply with a little pump, 8-foot bit of guttering, downpipe with holes in it, and just blow air through it. And the other one was the raking, where you just move it up one end and rake it out. And one of the things which is going to be hard, which is keep the wildfowl off as much as possible, because as quick as you bring it and take it away, the wildfowl fly in with it on their feet and it's off again. And lastly, safe chemicals. There's about 3 or 4 good chemicals that will bosh. As an instance, one that we used was one called sonar, which is basically a decoy, what they call a decoy. And the other one is the same, a decoy, which is, they call it reward, purchased anywhere, garden centres or whatever. And they kill the weed, but not the water.
but what about all the things in the water?
Pardon?
What about all the things in the water?
No, safe, purely safe.
It was looked into by Dover District Council.
All the
And
invertebrates.
it was turned down as being appropriate because of, as you say,
Yeah,
other things.
but what did you say about the natural predator?
Azola weevil, AZOLLA. That's what we use.
And it got rid of the,
Ate the lot in 2 weeks, and this is a stretch of about 300 yards by as wide as the rugby.
Did it eat mosquitoes?
No, ate all the duckweed.
Ate the duckweed, right.
So
that sounds
where
brilliant.
does it come from then?
Environment Agency.
No, but where does it originate from? Whereabouts? You say it's
Lost.
natural.
They found it obviously somewhere, or
Yeah, so
experiments
you're
or
moving
whatever.
different things
But
around
if it's a
different parts.
weevil, it has to be natural, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, but I say you're moving things and putting
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
into the environment which aren't originally there. You're messing with the
And the
environment.
beauty of the Azola weevil is, once it's ate all the duckweed, it dies.
Or starvation.
That's it. So you haven't got to worry about anything else.
Where did you use it?
At Hamfen, on the North Stream,
Oh, right.
because we had a problem when the beavers created the first dam, held a lot of the water up as it should do. Then it rolled off, just filtered over, went 300 yards where they built a second dam. So of course the whole of that stretch not moving, primary word, moving, duckweed, brought in by the ducks.
Yeah.
So we've got like what we call the South Grill, which is a environmental agency proper grill that you have to have to try and keep the beavers into their pen, but of course they just go down another 6 inches and under it. And she had them all in this little microwave pot. She took the lid off and thought, well, where are they? She just took it up and then went up the section. That's it. 2 weeks later, it's all gone.
And where do you get these weevils from?
The
The
EA.
Environment Agency.
Oh, you have to
Yeah.
get it from the
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'll mention it to
Well,
them.
we should
Yeah.
talk to them. Because otherwise, I mean, everybody in Sandwich would be getting hold of the weevils.
Well, I've put a lot of stuff on there, but I mean, you're welcome just to have a screenshot of this on your phone, and then you can read it at your leisure.
Okay.
But
So,
it's proven, that's the thing.
yeah,
And it's safe, ecologically safe.
Mm-hmm.
And used locally, so it's
Yeah.
not as though it's
Oh, yeah.
from a completely alien area.
so would people prefer if we had a quick decision now about when to meet next, or shall I just sort out a date in mid-February for us to meet here and announce it on Facebook pages, and also try to get this site meeting with the Internal Drainage Board and the EA.
Do we know
and
what
announce
date?
that?
Do we know what date is it 16th or 17th
Today?
of March? Is it? Because I'm tied up on one or the other day, but I'm free on the other.
Oh, no, February.
Oh, that's all right.
Wouldn't it be better to have the site meeting before we have another meeting of this group? Because what would this group talk about if we
Yeah,
haven't
it's
had that?
the same thing.
Should we all make a note of our emails maybe?
Yes.
So that we've got a mailing list.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I shall circulate a piece of blank paper.
Well, whenever you decide what the date is, make sure you put it up a week before.
Oh,
To
yeah.
tell people to come,
Yeah.
not a couple of days before, or one day.
Now, I know that
In the
one.
words
I know
of
that one.
Stacey.
I know that one. Meanwhile, we need a meeting of volunteers to carry on clearing the flower beds on the rope walk.
Mm.
Hint?
I don't mind doing that.
Oh, no,
I
It's good fun, actually.
Mm. Are they?
Let's put it out on
You can
It's
put that on
certainly
Facebook
Facebook
as
as
well,
well,
though.
yeah.
You can
Facebook, we
advertise
have
that on
12 people
Facebook.
there.
Yeah.
Yes,
Today
it is
you're going to
advertised.
do it.
Yeah,
It's
it
a
is.
mention
Yes.
Oh,
That's
Wednesday
how I
as
found
well.
out about
So we've
it.
got
yeah.
some
I think it's usually in the